Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars, topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So after 2 years, we finally got the NCAA tournament back. March Madness was officially here over the weekend. And what a weekend it was. I mean, it more than made up for the fact that we did not get the tournament last year. Now, obviously, leading up to the tournament, we had the conference championships, which were great fun, and we got some surprising teams made their runs and got into the tournament by winning the conference championships. But the key word of the weekend was upsets. Lots and lots of upsets. You had some underdogs, some Cinderellas, upsetting some big-name teams. In round one, we saw Ohio State lose to Oral Roberts, and no one expected that. And Oral Roberts, even yesterday, as I'm recording this on Monday, March 22nd, went back and won yet again, beating Florida and advancing to their first ever Sweet 16. So props to Oral Roberts out in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I guess. I've not heard of them before. But man, it was some shocking upsets. I mean, you had Purdue losing to the Mean Green, North Texas. Illinois losing to Loyola Chicago, who many people were on Twitter at least saying, Loyola should have been ranked higher anyways, and that was a tough matchup for Illinois. I mean, either way, some shocking wins. Oregon State continues their incredible streak after needing to win the Pac-12 tournament just to get in. They go and they beat Tennessee, who was the 5 seed, and then just last night upset Oklahoma State, Cade Cunningham and the crew, knocking them off. I was a little disappointed. I had Oklahoma State in my championship game, so was not thinking Oregon State was going to do that. But props to Oregon State and the Beavers, who, there's something to it when you're playing for your life the entire way, and you see some of these teams, those one bid conferences, where if you don't win your conference, you're not getting to the tournament. You have to have that mentality of it's win or go home every single game. And for these teams, it looks like it's benefiting and paying off for them because they've been playing with that mentality that they can't lose or else their season's over. For a lot of these teams, it was they were already going to be into the tournament. You didn't have to win your conference tournament. You weren't necessarily too worried about where you were going to be seated at. It was get in and get the tournament going. So it can lend itself to relaxing a bit. And not that none of these teams took each other serious, but there's that whole different mentality of if you lose one game, you're going home. And to be playing that way for 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, however long it was for a lot of these teams, it's a different edge that it gives them in this tournament. So props to all of them. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I was saying it last week on the pod. March Madness is one of the best events that is out there as a sports fan and even as a casual fan, because it's one of those events that you don't have to know anything about the teams or even about basketball, and you can be invested and you can be involved with it because it's such a cultural thing that goes on. It's the same thing with the Super Bowl, where you see so many people who come together and want to do the Super Bowl parties or be a part of the Super Bowl event. And when you have those types of events, like the March Madness that goes on, it just overtakes everything. I mean, how great is it if you're someone that doesn't have to work and you're able to sit around all day and just watch all the games, and from 9 a.m. till almost midnight or 10 p.m., depending on where you're at, you have games going on all day. There's action from start to finish. You got games going on while other games are starting. Now, as you move on each round, it's less and less of all games being played together and at the same time, as opposed to you finish one game and then your next one's starting in about 10, 15 minutes, which honestly, having the all games going on, I got the multiple screens set up and just enjoying March Madness. It was truly missed last season, and not being able to have it, it made having it this year and watching all the games and watching your bracket and betting on games and all of it, it makes me appreciate it so much more. And you are really happy for all these teams. I mean, look at Syracuse, who it seems every time Syracuse barely gets in the tournament, or they're on the fence, they're a bubble team. And what do? They just keep on winning and keep on advancing and shocking people. They dismantled San Diego State, and then they had a tough, hard-fought, close victory over West Virginia. And that 2-3 zone that Boeheim is known for and Syracuse is known for. Yet people just can't figure it out. It seems once you get into the tournament, teams crumble. It's not something they're used to seeing all the time. It's not every team's deploying it throughout the season. You don't have as much time to prepare for it. And you see teams struggle with that Syracuse zone. Even though it's known that Syracuse is going to have their zone defense and it's going to be out there, teams, once they match up with them, they struggle, and it just happens that way. But having March Madness back this year and the weekend that it was, seeing the teams, Abilene Christian University, who've only been in Division I basketball for, I think they said 5 years, go and knock off Texas, who had just come off their Big 12 championship run. You're happy for those schools. You're happy for those players, and it's really fun to watch, and it's what March Madness is all about. It's just that lower-name school going on the run, or the team that you don't expect much out of, and they take down that big-name school. I mean, Loyola Chicago, who a few years back, Sister Jean and that school, they went on their Final Four run, and it was one of those true Cinderella-type runs that was going on. And this year, they had a little bit more knowledge behind them. They were known more. It was, all right, well, we saw this no-name school come in and make a run. Well, now it was, okay, we got to take them a little more serious, and they destroyed Illinois. They handled them with ease from start to finish. I don't think Illinois led at all in that game, and that was the number one seed in their bracket, in their region at least, and they had no answers for Loyola Chicago. They just, from start to finish, put a nice whooping on Illinois. And you watch these teams, and you don't have the Dukes this year, you don't have the Kentuckys, but you're seeing all these lower-name schools, and it was the amount of double-digit seeds that advanced. We had a 15 seed. They're going to the Sweet 16. And Oral Roberts, first time since, second time only, but first time since Florida Gulf Coast. It's really exciting, and it makes you think, why are all these teams getting upset? And it has been a weird college basketball season. Obviously, it's not the normal route with the pandemic going on and season starting a little bit later and everything kind of happening and no fans. But with the tournament going on, there have been some fans, and it's nice to see that again as we're getting closer to more and more fans being allowed at these arenas and for games. But the entire vibe that has been going on at this tournament has been exactly what was missed last year, and it's why March Madness is such a phenomenon. It's, even if you're not a basketball fan, even if you don't know anything about college basketball, just being able to watch, and you hear all the upsets, you hear about all the upsets, you go to Twitter, and it's blowing up, and it's, oh, my bracket's busted, how could this happen? And it's truly what was missed last season, and I'm very thankful to have it back. And it's interesting to watch all these teams. I mean, look at Oregon State, who, had they lost one game in that Pac-12 tournament, their season was over. They weren't going to go anywhere. They were picked to finish last in the Pac-12, and yet you have them in the Sweet 16. And look at the Pac-12 in itself. I mean, this is a conference that a lot of times doesn't get much love from the bigger, as opposed to like the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the SEC, ACC. It's looked on and it's sometimes treated as the little brother of all the group. And to have them be undefeated thus far in the tournament, Pac-12 is 9-0 now. 9-0 in the tournament. Oregon advances to the Sweet 16. And unfortunately, they had their first game get ruled a no contest. You felt bad for VCU having that happen to them, and the fact that a COVID outbreak happened on them. And we wondered what would be the course of action if something like that happened. And we saw that they ruled a no contest, so Oregon had advanced without having to play. But then Oregon just today dismantles Iowa, the 2 seed, and putting an end to the career of Luka Garza at Iowa. And you saw Ohio State, a 2 seed, lose. We've seen a 1 seed lose already. We've seen a couple 4 seeds and 3 seeds. And it's just exactly what March Madness is all about. These schools that we don't know anything about or don't expect much from, being able to come in, put on a show, and for at least a few weeks provide this energy and spark that you almost only associate with movies. Like, you're watching these teams, and like a team like Oregon State, I'll stick with, who, like I said, they had to win every game just to get into the tournament. You can't, if you went to and pitched that in Hollywood, they'd be like, we need something more realistic. No team is going to go and win all this and then advance to the Sweet 16 and be doing all of this and being such a great story. It's not real enough. You wouldn't imagine it like that. But yet, here we are, and that's where we're at. And it's a true Hollywood kind of make-believe feel, and that's what March Madness does for people. It truly gives you a Cinderella story most years to where who's it going to be this year? And this March, there's many teams. It's tough to choose from. I mean, if you really wanted to look at it and go, okay, well, who's the true Cinderella? I mean, we have a couple. Oral Roberts would get it the most because they are the 15 seed and how unknown they are. But you can say like a team like Oregon State or Syracuse, and even though Syracuse is a big program and a dominant name, they haven't been the same Syracuse that we've seen in the past. And the fact that they were kind of limping in and you weren't expecting Syracuse to go on this big run, and yet here they are. They're in the Sweet 16. We almost had the early upset on day 2 of Kansas was in trouble. They were facing off against Eastern Washington, and you thought, oh man, we're going to have an upset right there and early on. And the day 1, the only true big upset was the Oral Roberts over Ohio State. But again, that's a big moment. Knocking off a team who many people probably had in their Final Fours at least. Gonzaga looks dominant as ever. They truly look like it wouldn't have mattered who they're going to face this season. They look so unstoppable that you almost think, okay, well, of any season where you're going to have some shocking things happen, maybe them not winning it all is the most shocking because they do everything right. And they could possibly have a perfect season. They haven't lost at all this year. So there's so many storylines that go into with March Madness. And it's why it's one of those great events. And not having it and being able to have it this year has been a jolt of energy almost. Even though for most of the time you're just sitting on your couch watching, and probably the laziest couple days. I don't think I left my house for the weekend because it was, hey, we got March Madness all day, morning to night, and it's truly one of my favorite times of the year. And all these teams, props to the unknown teams and putting on a show, and just for some of these guys, it's the last time they're ever going to play organized basketball for a team again. Not everyone's going to the NBA. Not everyone's going to go play professionally somewhere else. For a lot of these guys, this is the last time they truly will be a part of like their team and this team culture. And you're just happy to see that they get a little bit of a spotlight on them for a few weeks in March, and they have the entire country, entire world, and people backing them and cheering for them and going with them, because no one's necessarily cheering for the favorites to win. I mean, obviously you have your brackets and you have those filled out, and if you're betting on it, you're betting on your team and you want them to win. But the true fun nature of it all is when you have these underdogs, these Cinderella teams go on this run and be a part of this. Well, how far can they go? Who can they beat next? Oh, they can't really take down that team. There's no way. They're too good. And yet, that's exactly what happens. Is you have them go and surprise everyone and put on these upsets. So props to the NCAA, who doesn't always get the best of. They don't always get the best things said about them. They do make a lot of mistakes. I mean, we did see it, unfortunately, for the women's tournament. They weren't treated the same as the men's side of things, and their facilities and their weight room were not up to par, and that was unfortunate to see. They got called out about it, and they went to try and fix the problem, so we'll see what happens there. But for being able to navigate and get through everything and handle this COVID season that it was, and this uniqueness to it all, and put everyone in somewhat of a bubble. I mean, they're keeping all the games in Indiana to try and limit the travel and exposure. But props were due. We made it through the season. Everyone is happy that we did get a tournament, because we could not have gone back-to-back seasons without one, because when Thursday happened, on Thursday night, it was, all right, well, this is cool. We got some games. It's the first four. And at some teams that you're like, okay, well, we're not necessarily too stoked to watch them. Like, sure, we'll watch, because, I mean, if you're a March Madness fan, yeah, you're going to watch. But Friday, the first true day of it all, when we have those 9 a.m. tip-offs, was the real day. And I know in my household we felt a certain way, and excitement, especially after missing out. And hopefully we do get maybe a surprising Cinderella matchup. I mean, who knows? You still have some favorites that are hanging around. Michigan's taking on LSU tonight. They're looking to advance to the Sweet 16. Gonzaga punched their ticket to the Sweet 16. We'll see Baylor moved on to the Sweet 16, and you're going to watch all these teams and see, okay, so you still do have the favorites, and you have some teams that aren't necessarily favorites, but are that sleeper of a favorite. The Florida States, who are still around. Kansas, you could consider. But it's truly, it's anyone's ball game at this point, and it's just been a blast to really watch and see what's going on. And I can't say how much I am happy to have it going on and to have March Madness back. So let's hopefully we keep getting these great games, and every game has, for the most part, there hasn't been a ton of blowouts. They've all been pretty competitive. Even the 1 versus 16 seeds, they've been relatively close-ish for the most part, or you can at least see some fight from them, and we've had some crazy finishes. We've had that Texas versus Abilene Christian the other night. I mean, wild finish. You had a 58% free throw shooter knock down 2 free throws, swished them to give his team the 1-point win. Was something that I props and happy for him and that team doing that. And the best part is you're seeing the benches bringing the energy, because there's not the same amount of fans. You don't have that energy of your crowd fully there. But there are some fans there, and they're bringing that energy and fired up, and we're watching videos of the sideline dancing, and then when they win, the locker room going wild and showering their coach with water. So, great first weekend of March Madness. Thankful to have it. Can't wait to keep watching some more. We'll have some games finishing up here tonight as I'm on talking right now as I record this. Then we'll get a break, and we'll have games coming back starting on Saturday, and Sunday we'll have the Sweet 16, and we'll see who else. Hey, do we have any more Cinderellas advancing? What's the next upset that's going to go on, or who's going to take it to another team, and will any of the big dogs that are left be still standing by this time next week? Who knows? I mean, we'll find out, but hey, keep on watching. Hopefully, if you're lucky enough, your bracket is not busted yet. Mine's technically not. It's still hanging around. My champion is still in it. I mean, I guess that's all that matters. As long as your champion's in it, you still have a shot. But thank you, NCAA. Thank you to all the teams for giving us a great first weekend. Keep up the good work. Can't wait to keep watching. On some unfortunate news that I want to get into coming up next, injuries. Injuries are the worst thing in sports. Everyone hates injuries. No one wants them. I wish we could have it be like it is in the video games where you can turn off injuries because you don't want to lose your superstar players. We had some big-time injuries happen over the weekend that I want to get into in the NBA, so stick around. We'll tell you about what big names are now out. What does it mean for the rest of the season? And it is the trade deadline week coming up, so we'll keep our eyes on that for any big moves that pop, anything that happens. I've heard some names going on, but stay right there. Coming right back, I want to talk about some injuries to some key guys that happened over the weekend. It's the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Alrighty, welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So over the weekend, we did have the March Madness come back, and first round and second rounds going on. So happy to have those back. Fun weekend of just sitting on the couch all day, binging, watching a bunch of college hoops, and who can ask for anything better than that? That's a great weekend right there for me. But as many of you may know, that the NBA still went on, and still there were games, and it wasn't just college basketball. The world did not stop because March Madness started, even though my world stopped while March Madness was going on. And unfortunately, over the weekend, we had some major injuries happen, and it's going to affect the NBA moving forward for this season, and we'll see what happens. The first one that really caught my eye, obviously, is the big one that LeBron James got hurt against the Atlanta Hawks, and he sprained his right ankle. And the Lakers announced that LeBron will be sidelined for about 3 to 4 weeks. Now, it's not playoff times, and obviously that's the most important time for the Lakers and for LeBron is the playoffs. But him being sidelined 3 to 4 weeks is not good, obviously, for the Lakers right now because of the fact you lose LeBron James. It's a pretty tough blow to your team for any sort of amount of time. But 3 to 4 weeks is no small amount of time. But also the fact that Anthony Davis is still sidelined, and he's still going to be sidelined for quite a bit. So the Lakers are about to be without LeBron and Anthony Davis for at least the next 3 weeks. And obviously in the West, we see how tight it is and how close everything is in that conference. And the fact that they now lose their 2 best players, and you looked at them and went, okay, well, they're down Anthony Davis. They've been without Anthony Davis since February 10th range, I believe. And now the fact that they're out without LeBron, you look at it and you go, okay, well, that's really not good for them. And they're down their 2 best players. You can only expect everyone else to step up so much and keep them afloat. They are in 3rd place right now in the West, and looking ahead, I still don't think it's important too much about where they get seeded. That's not the concern with this team. It's get healthy as much as you can, because now that you have your 2 best guys and your 2 most important players both being hampered, it's okay, well, now you don't want to rush them back at all. They won't fall out of the playoffs, obviously, and they're not going to fall they're not going to fall all the way to the play-in tournament spots, and that's not the concern there. You don't really anticipate that happening. But again, being without LeBron and AD for this big extended amount of time is concerning, and you do worry that, okay, well, if they're missing a month at least, where are they going to go? Where do they get their scoring? How do they win without those 2 guys? Because you look at it, you go, those are the 2 most important players on that team, and for any team, when you lose your 2 best guys, you are in for a world of trouble, and you got to find where you get your offense from, where you get your how do you get wins? And they're sitting at 28-15 right now. You have the Clippers at 27-16, Nuggets, Trailblazers at 25-17, and then you have the Spurs and Mavericks in the 7 and 8 spots at 22-17 and 22-19. So again, they still have some games to play with and some spots, but being without LeBron and AD for this stretch, and it's not an easy stretch at all for them. I mean, they have some really tough games coming up, and their schedule for this time, for at least the next couple games, is not something that you want to mess around with, and it would be very, very nice for them if they did have LeBron and AD, but you look at it, you go, they have the Pelicans coming up on Tuesday, and then they host the Sixers. And those are 2 teams who, the Sixers obviously are a playoff team and finals favorite almost, but you talk about injuries, I mean, they still have Embiid out. The Pelicans are fighting for the playoffs, so you're going to see them giving their best effort, and this could not have happened better for them, that the fact that the Lakers are out, so they get a matchup on Tuesday without LeBron and AD. You see the Bucks at the end of the month. They have a matchup with the Clippers, the Raptors, the Heat, the Nets. Lots of games and tough spots. I mean, the end of the season is middle May. How long can they stay afloat? How long can they survive without both LeBron and Anthony Davis? Where will they wind up being at? What's going to go on with them? And we have the trade deadline coming up, so you can look at it and you go, okay, well, there are some moves that can be made, and they can try and bring someone in, but do they have tradable pieces enough to go and get someone? And if they go and get someone, the big problem is when you have them, they're not going to be accustomed to playing with LeBron and AD, and that takes time in itself to form that connection and that chemistry, that there just won't be enough time by the time these guys get back to have that. So you can't really bring in another guy, and there's no one you're going to bring in that's going to give you the production value that LeBron and AD give you. So now it's about, hey, Caruso, Kuzma, Schroeder, you need big-time step up from them. You're going to need Wesley Matthews, Montrezl Harrell, all of them to be contributing. And if this team can go, you want to just go 500 at this point without those 2 guys. And looking at it, you weren't concerned too much when it was, okay, they're going to be out without AD for a while. But now add LeBron to that, it is a bit of a cause for concern, and it is getting closer to crunch time to where you thought they might have started to turn on the Jets and maybe make a push for that 1 seed or higher up. But now it's about staying afloat and staying out of that play-in tournament, because you want as much rest as you can get these guys now, and you don't want to have to play any extra games than that's needed. Now, again, if the Lakers finish with the 4 or 5 seed, and even if they ended up getting the 6 seed, I'm not super concerned. It's get to the playoffs, get healthy. That's all that matters for this team. But that's a huge blow, and it's just a huge blow to the NBA in itself that you lose LeBron James for some more time. And he was playing, and running for the MVP. I mean, same thing with Joel Embiid, is that you had these two guys who were the two front runners for the MVP, and now they're going to miss a significant amount of time to where you think that probably hurts their chances, and it takes away big time what you would assume would be coming down between them. But with missing so much time, it kind of takes them out of the running for the MVP, and I'll talk about that next coming up. With Embiid and LeBron missing time, is the MVP race is wide open, and there is one guy who I think moves into the position of being the favorite, and it's not Steph Curry, who I had predicted earlier on, so I'll get to that next. But the other big injury that happened over the weekend, and unfortunate, all injuries are unfortunate, but this one in particular made me pretty upset, because LaMelo Ball fractured his right wrist, and he is probably going to miss the rest of the season, thus ending his rookie season. And for the Hornets, you feel bad. You finally saw this team had some life to it, a franchise that for so long hasn't been anything really, and they're in the playoff spots, and they were sitting coming into the day in the 8th seed, and now you expect with LaMelo out, it's probably not looking great for them. I mean, I've been on this podcast talking about how much I've enjoyed the Hornets this season, and just how much fun they were, and I thought they were the most fun team this season, and of any team to watch. And part of that reason was because of LaMelo Ball. I mean, he had come in, and in my eyes, he was the favorite for Rookie of the Year, and he was bringing a new energy, a new swagger to this organization that it had been missing for a while. They were playing well since he had gotten inserted into the starting point guard role. They had really kind of found themselves, and it was pretty fun and pretty awesome to watch. And just him going down and now going to be out is a huge blow, and you hope that the Hornets can keep going and keep rallying, because they have dealt with other injuries. They had Devontae Graham out for a while. Cody Zeller at the beginning of the season fractured his hand or wrist. I'm not sure. I can't think of which one it was, but he had fractured something on his arm. And you just thought, okay, well, again, you're not looking at this team as a playoff threat, or that they were going to make big-time noise and upset a bunch of teams in the playoffs. But it was nice to see for the fans of Charlotte that they had a team that they could be excited for and hopeful. And that doesn't stop just because LaMelo's out for the season now. I mean, you still have Scary Terry going and balling, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, Devontae Graham, Malik Monk. You still have guys going off and giving their all. But LaMelo Ball brought a certain amount of eyeballs to the team. And that was a big thing about when he got drafted by them, was that he was a name that people knew. And it was someone that you really wanted to watch and see, because you weren't sure what you were going to get. I mean, this was a guy who was pretty heavily criticized leading up to the draft. People weren't sure, can he work in the NBA? His jump shot doesn't look great. And will that really translate over? And he skipped college and high school. He didn't finish it up this season. He left his team early. And he played overseas, and it was, okay, well, what does this kid really have? And should he be the number one? Should he be a top pick? Is he going to fall in the draft? And early on, it wasn't you didn't get the mind-blowing numbers, and he wasn't putting on a show, and it was, okay, well, maybe he will take time to develop. And then he got inserted into the starting lineup, and he'll finish up the season if he doesn't play, if he does get surgery, and his season is over, which they anticipate. Almost 16 points at 15.9 points per game. He had 5.9 rebounds, 6 assists. He shot 45% from the field and 37% from three. And again, it was he brought eyeballs and attention to a franchise that they were most known for being owned by Michael Jordan. I mean, that's what it was, is that the Hornets, there wasn't a player on the court that was bringing attention to him, really. It was the fact that Michael Jordan was the owner, and that was the biggest name that drew to the team. And finally, when they got LaMelo and he was playing well, and he truly became the franchise piece that they had been looking for. And you hope he heals up and everything goes right, and he's back next year putting up those numbers. But it is really unfortunate that the injuries always, in every season and in every sport, injuries play a big role. And if you cannot stay healthy, or if you can stay healthy, whoever is able to navigate around injuries, because they're bound to happen. But seeing guys like, we now have lost LeBron, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, MVP type players. Kevin Durant has been out for quite some time, and he's been dealing with his own hamstring injury after we had lost him for a season. So it's just really unfortunate. I mean, not to mention Klay Thompson hasn't played this season because he's dealing with his own season-ending injury for the second year in a row. And it's just, for so much that had been great about what's going on in the NBA this year, and the games have been fun, and they've been navigating things well, and not being in the bubble this season, actually being in their home markets, it is a blow to see MVP type guys, the young up and coming rookie of the year favorite, all go down to big time injuries. Is a shot to all NBA fans throughout, and we just hope that it is speedy recoveries and everyone is able to come back and play at their elite level that they are at. And now, if you're Anthony Edwards and Tyrese Halliburton or Emmanuel Quickley or James Wiseman, the Rookie of the Year running just got thrown up for grabs, because LaMelo's not going to win Rookie of the Year now. He wasn't guaranteed to win it anyways. But similar to how LeBron and Embiid probably miss out on the MVP just for the sheer fact of time missed, that you'd imagine that they won't have enough games in them. And there's that recency bias that comes into play, is that the last time you had Mark LaMelo play ball is March 20th. And there's still a lot of season left. And that's a lot of time for Anthony Edwards, who is a guy who has been on the rise and making a lot of noise. And he was another one that was a pretty criticized number one pick. It was, is he going to be able to do, was that the right move? Should they have taken LaMelo? Should they have taken a Wiseman? Did they mess it up again? Did the Wolves miss on another top pick? And as of late, he has been really coming on. So you look at him and you go, he's probably moves now into being the favorite for Rookie of the Year, with LaMelo Ball going down. And again, there is still a lot of time left in the season. But I mean, he's at 16.7 points a game, 4.3 rebounds. He's not shooting as efficient as LaMelo was. That's been one of the things that was a knock on him, and he's even admitted that he says he can shoot more efficiently. But we just saw him the other night drop a career-high 42 points. So you look at this and you go, okay, well, he has a break. and truly show why you awarded him as the Rookie of the Year and truly show why you were the number one overall pick. James Wiseman, who early on had started to play once he got back from his COVID issues, had some hit and miss games. You can see the potential in him and how much learning from Steph and Draymond has really helped him, but he's now been dealing with a second COVID issue. It's not necessarily that he has it again. It's that he's just back in that concussion or in the COVID protocol. So he's missed the last couple games. Him and Eric Paschal. So for the Rookie of the Year, it's not dropping like flies, but it's showing that Anthony Edwards, this is your moment to really take over. And unfortunateness of injuries or COVID and setbacks happening to players and teams, it is a chance for others to step up and show what they're made of and their skill set. I mean, you look at all these teams with dealing with injuries and having to navigate around missed games because of COVID, whatever it is, and you go, well, who's next man up? Who's going to step up for us? Who's going to be that guy? And you look at the Sixers are trying to do that with Joel Embiid out. The Lakers have been doing it without Anthony Davis. Now they're going to do it without LeBron James also. The Hornets, you go, okay, well, who's the guy there? Is it Scary Terry just trying to get them completely over as the guy on that team and trying to get them back into the playoffs and make a little bit of noise in the East? But for the most part, it just sucks that injuries come and play a big factor in the season once again. And we hope that all these guys come back healthy and are productive once again. And you never want injuries, and we wish so badly it could be like a video game. We turn off the injuries, but it's not possible. So some unfortunate news over the weekend, and for how great the weekend was of college hoops and even NBA action that went on and fun games. It's getting to the point of, here we go. We got the trade deadline coming up, so gonna start seeing moves happen. We saw PJ Tucker get traded last week, and so he's off Houston now. Houston, my God, it's rough times for them. They've lost injuries going on, and hopefully those stars get back. And with the injuries going on, and hopefully those stars get back, and everyone's healthy for the regular season, or the postseason, excuse me. So, yeah, tough news, but with tough news comes opportunity. And now that you take Joel Embiid and LeBron James probably out of the MVP race, there's another guy.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Alrighty, welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. So I want to get into this MVP talk now because LeBron James is going to be out indefinitely with the right ankle sprain, and Joel Embiid is already out with his knee bruise. So it got me thinking, all right, well, if those two are going to be out and missing a significant amount of time and they were the two favorites for the MVP, then obviously there's going to be a need for someone else and be the MVP this year, because those two most likely are not going to be in the running just because not enough games. They will be too far behind and have to, again, like I was talking about with the Rookie of the Year, how there's that recency bias, and you won't have seen them for a while. And even if they get back in enough time that they have to build their case, it's not going to be right back to MVP form. And so there's a guy who I think should, even before all this happened and before Embiid and LeBron went down with injuries, been getting a lot more MVP consideration and even probably should have been the favorite in my eyes. And before the season started, I said Steph Curry should be the MVP because of the fact, or that he should be the favorite to win the MVP, because if the Warriors are able to get in a top 5 seed or within that range, is that it's going to be on the back of Steph Curry playing like a superstar like he is. And he has done and played great. The Warriors' record hasn't necessarily helped his case, though, because of the fact that they are now fighting for that play-in playoff spot and trying to gain ground. And it's been a pretty 500 season for them. It's about average, and they haven't been that overly dominant team. And in not taking anything away from Steph, he's played great. And it's just the team success has not quite been there the same way as you would think or had hoped for. And the guy that I'm thinking of that should be now considered the MVP favorite, and Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard, who for so long, I mean, Damian Lillard's career, he's been one of the best players in the NBA. He's one of the most deadly shooters we have in this league. I mean, the best shooter in the league is Steph Curry. Number 2, probably Damian Lillard's right there. I mean, the guy can shoot from anywhere on the court. He can make any shot, make any basket. We saw in the All-Star game, him and Steph trading half-court shots, making it look like ease. But he's always been looked at as a notch just below Steph. And they get a lot of comparisons, the two of them, and both point guards, both can shoot out of the gym range. But everyone always knocked it. Dame does not have the playoff success. He doesn't have a finals appearance, doesn't have any of the trophies. But also one of the things he's been lacking is he's never had an MVP. And he's never quite been in that MVP conversation. And what he's been able to do with Portland is something that I thought would be what Steph would have done this year, and to put himself in that MVP talk. And that's carry a team where there isn't a ton of other options. When CJ McCollum went down with his broken foot, I thought the Blazers were done. I did not see any way that they would be able to stay afloat or be able to be a top 4 seed. It was not going to happen because it was only going to be reliant on Dame. And as much as I like Dame and as great of a player he is, I didn't think that, hey, they don't have enough firepower to win enough games and to do enough, and they'd probably be in about that 8 seed, maybe 9, and fighting for that play-in tournament, kind of what the Warriors are doing right now. Well, weeks later, in a couple months, CJ McCollum was out with a broken foot. Yusuf Nurkic was out with a fractured wrist. And the Blazers are right there battling for a high playoff seed. They're currently sitting tied for 5th with the Nuggets at 25-17. They're just 2.5 out of the 3rd seed, and with LeBron James and Anthony Davis both being out with injuries, and the Lakers aren't going to have the same firepower, and they're not going to win at the same clip. The Blazers have a really, really good shot at being a top 4 seed. And that's because of what Dame Lillard did for all that time when CJ McCollum was out. And take nothing away from other guys like James Harden, who, since he's been on Brooklyn, has balled out. I mean, they haven't had KD. He's been dealing with his own injury, and yet Brooklyn's been the hottest team in the NBA. But what the Blazers and Dame have done, I mean, just look at what Dame is doing this season. 30.6 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, and 7.8 assists. He legitimately, his number 2 option when CJ was down was Gary Trent Jr. and no offense to Gary Trent Jr., I really like him as a player. He's a nice shooter. I think he could be a really good sixth man of the year type candidate. That's not who you want as your number 2 running mate. It's just not. And you had Carmelo Anthony, and I talked about it last week on the pod, how nice it was to see the resurgence of Carmelo Anthony and him getting a little bit more respect that I thought he deserved for everything that he's done in his career and the player that he's been. But again, it's not, you're not getting Melo of 2009, 8, those types of years to where he is the number 1 guy on a team or he's that level of a player. It's Carmelo Anthony in the back half in his 18th, or well, technically his 18th season. He did play in that 17th. He just didn't play very much. But again, that's not a guy who you want as the number 2 option on a team, and it's not where you're at. And the fact that you look at the Blazers, and they not only did they stay afloat, but they were pushing for the top 4 seed, and they still are within that range. You looked at them, and you have to give Dame a huge amount of consideration for the MVP. If you took Dame off that team, where would they be? They would be in deep, deep trouble. They probably, if you don't have Dame, obviously if they didn't have CJ, Dame, and Nurkic, they were going to be done. They weren't going to be anywhere. But the fact that Dame put all of that team on his shoulder, and he many nights willed them the victory. I mean, look at the win against Chicago. He hits 8 points in the matter of 9 seconds, hits the game winner over the Bulls, and it's everything he's done this season without his running mate, without his third best option, would be Nurkic. He is the MVP in my eyes. And again, you can make I would not go against anyone that made an argument for Jokic. And the Joker is the best big man in the NBA. In my opinion, I think he's the best. Take nothing away from Joel Embiid, who is a dominant center. Jokic can just do everything. He's not going to give you the same amount on defense, but he is a guy who can run your offense, make all the plays happen for you, shoot lights out when you need him to, and he is one of the best players in the NBA, and he's definitely the best big man in the NBA. But the Nuggets still do have Jamal Murray. I still really like Michael Porter Jr. You have Gary Harris. You have other pieces on that team to where, they have more contributing guys or better players on their team to where Dame was doing it, and it was mainly if Dame did not go off or have a great night and make sure that down the stretch it was Dame time, the Blazers were screwed. And it's part of it, because you look at it, and in years past, when Blazers have failed or they have come up short in the playoffs, is who gets the brunt of it? It's Dame, and that's what goes with being the best player on your team. And that goes, look at the NFL. What's the thing that happens is that quarterbacks get the most praise, and they also get most of the blame. If you're a quarterback and your team wins, you're getting a lot of the shine. And if your team loses, that blame, you're going to have to answer a lot of questions. I mean, look at Dak Prescott. That's been the story of his career his entire time there. And props to Dak for getting paid and betting on himself, and it worked out. But when you're the star player and you're the guy and you're the person who, you're the franchise player, a lot's going to be asked of you. And Dame has delivered this year. This has been the fact that the Blazers are within reach of a top 3, a top 2 seed with missing so much is all the credit to Dame and the team, yes, but their superstar player, and Terry Stotts has found a way, and I think Terry Stotts, is a bit of an underrated coach because he's been able to manage and handle all of that, and he's one of the active. He has been one of the longest tenured coach in a while, and I think he gets slept on a bit. He has been in Portland for a minute now, and they're ever since he's gotten there, they've been a consistent playoff team, and they always have a chance at winning, and you never necessarily look at them and go, oh, they're a title favorite, but with him and Dame there together, they've always been on the verge or within reach of being, they could at least get to the Western Conference Finals. Now, there is the problem of the fact that there is a dynasty in the West that you ran into that you went, okay, well, probably can't win the Western Conference, but you can be in the conference finals, so that's something. And then again, only one team wins the championship, and if you have a dominant team in your conference, your best bet is, well, we hope we can beat them. And the biggest knock against Dame and those teams were the fact that they had gotten to only one Western Conference Finals, and when they got there, they got swept by the Dubs. But what Dame has done this year and what that Portland Trailblazers team has done has been pretty remarkable because, yeah, they were down with CJ and down without Nurkic, and Zach Collins has been out. They've dealt with injuries, and yet they're still right there, and they're on the verge of being a top 4 team. And so I look at it and you go, oh, how can you not give it to Dame? Because what is MVP? Most valuable player. The most valuable player to his team this season has been Damian Lillard. Because if you take him off the team, if he is not there, where is Portland? They're picking in the lottery. They're not even close to being a top playoff team or anywhere near a top 4 team at all. Dame has been the most important player on his team or on any team, because without Dame, the Blazers would have been considered dead a long, long time ago. I don't want to say he's not slept on, because everyone knows Dame and everyone appreciates his game, but it's always been he's not quite reached that next level of player. He's always Dame's great and all, but there's always a but. There's always something else, and it's never, well, Dame is a MVP player, and maybe in the years past he hasn't necessarily earned that honor or been considered because it was, he hasn't quite put up those types of games or that type of season. And that's fair. But this season, you can't go very far when you talk about MVP without mentioning Dame. But I get it. If you prefer what Jokic has done or his game and how he's kept the Nuggets afloat, because they didn't get off to a great start, and yet here they are. They're tied with the Blazers for that fifth spot and can easily get to a top 3 seed, get to a top 2 spot here by the end of the season. And you would look at, and Jokic is the best player on that team. He is the reason why they are within that range. But I just look at it and I go, well, they have more pieces and more weapons on that team to where he doesn't have to shoulder everything that team's offense does. Now he's the focal point, and he runs their offense, and everything runs through him. But and I don't even want to say that if they didn't have him, that they'd still be this, because they obviously wouldn't be that good. No team, if you didn't have your star player, would be as good as you are. That's just a fact of it. That's you take away the star player, the team's not nearly as good as anywhere where they would be. But for what Dame has done this year, and for what that team had, he's my guy. He just does everything for them. And it's Dame time. And there's no guy you want. There might be not any other guy you want with the ball in his hands and crunch time. You can take your pick and have your guy. There's not too many bad options you go with. But the one guy that I would want that always seems to come up clutch and hit those big time shots is Dame. It's now we do want and hope that he gets that signature deep playoff moment, because he obviously has playoff moments. I mean, he has 2 of the biggest playoff shots when he eliminated the Thunder and sent Paul George and Russell Westbrook home packing. He did it against Houston early on in his career, that little coming off the screen and hitting the three at the buzzer to advance over James Harden and Dwight Howard's Houston Rockets. So he has playoff moments, and he has big shots, and he's not afraid to do that. But you want to see a big-time playoff shot in the Western Conference Finals, in a finals. And there are some guys, and there are some players that just don't get to a final, that are great players. And not everyone's going to win a title. That's the bottom line. There's too many good teams and too many good players that some of the greats, they don't win a title. And that's fair, and that's fine. And Dame has said he doesn't want to leave Portland, and he wants to bring a title to Portland. And you praise that, and you go, okay, well, let's see it happen. And we hope that he can get it done and do that. But for going on right now and this current season and what he's meant and been to his team, he has been the most valuable piece or player to any team in the league. Not taking anything away from what James Harden has done, Jokic, LeBron, Embiid, Steph, all of those guys, everyone. Giannis. Dame Lillard has been the most valuable player, and that's been my biggest issue with MVPs. I mean, when we look at it, one of the arguments is, well, LeBron James could win the MVP every single season, and I wholeheartedly agree with that because he has always been the most valuable player to his teams in the league. What were the Cavs without LeBron? Lottery. Okay. Yeah, nope, terrible. When he left the Heat, where were they? They were missing the playoffs. Then he went back to Cleveland, and he brought a title. And then when he left, they've been crap. He's been the most valuable player. It's the guy who, if you took him off that team, if he was not there, if they were missing him, where would they be without him? That's most valuable. It's not the best player of the year. It's not the best player of all time. It's not the best player of the season. In my eyes, MVP is the most valuable guy, not who had the best stats that season. Triple-doubles are nice. Russell Westbrook was not the most valuable player to his team because they didn't win enough. They were, a 5 seed? 6 seed? That's not most valuable. Yeah, you put up gaudy stats, like, great, that's awesome. I don't want to take anything away from you averaging a triple-double. But you weren't the most valuable player because your team didn't win enough with you. And when you were gone, it didn't leave as big of an imprint on that squad. And so I look at this season and I go, the most valuable guy this season. What the award states, most valuable player, is hands down Damian Lillard and what he's done for the Portland Trailblazers this season. Because without them, they would have been completely done and picking in the lottery. And now that they have his running mate back, and Nurkic is going to be coming back here shortly, hopefully, they can be truly a scary title contender team. I still think that they'll need to make another move, and we got the deadline approaching, and so they can still go out and get something and make an improvement to that team. But Damian Lillard, even before Embiid and LeBron went down, probably should have been considered more of an MVP than he was getting credit for. And now with those guys down, I think it's his for the taking, and I would love to see Dame finally get appreciated for the player that he is. Not saying that people don't appreciate him, but there is a certain knock that they give him, and he, rightfully so, hasn't necessarily earned being on that status, but he is one of the best players we have in this league, and for me, he is the MVP as long as he can keep it up going the rest of the way. So that's my guy. That's my pick for MVP. Moving forward, the rest of the season, we'll see what happens. Obviously, my original selection of Steph Curry isn't looking so great, and he's played great. He's been phenomenal. He's been the most valuable Warrior. Obviously, we've seen what happens when he's not there. But overall, the most valuable player to his team has been Dame Lillard because they are in a position of being a really high-seeded playoff team. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And coming up, the trade deadline is this week. And I don't want to quite get into that yet. I'll react to that because I'll be recording on Thursday, and that will be the deadline day. So we'll take a look at all the trades that happened that day. But my question that I want to take a look at is, will we see an active trade deadline? Usually it's pretty active, and a lot of trades are going on and things, and we've already seen some trades happen. I mentioned earlier the PJ Tucker trade. But now that there are potentially more playoff spots with the play-in tournament, do we anticipate an active deadline? We'll take a look, but stay right there. We'll take a quick break. It's the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Alrighty, welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I want to thank you guys for sticking around, listening, and hanging out with me. It's been fun. We had a great weekend of NCAA basketball, the March Madness going off. Great opening weekend. Look for that to continue on Saturday and Sunday with the Sweet 16. NBA injuries, unfortunately, happening over the weekend with LeBron James and LaMelo Ball both going down. LaMelo out for the season. LeBron James out indefinitely, so they put in him about 3 to 4 weeks. And so we'll see how the Lakers can handle that. Obviously, they're already down Anthony Davis, and they can't afford to have any more bodies going down. But I think they'll be okay. Again, seeding's not super important to the Lakers. All that's a matter of is being healthy and peaking at the right time. So hopefully everyone comes back healthy. We still want Joel Embiid back healthy, Kevin Durant, everyone. Injuries are the worst. Injuries just suck, and we hate when them happens. But it opens up new opportunities for guys. And Dame Lillard has a chance now to really make an MVP statement and win his first MVP. And we'll see what happens. I think it'll come down now at this point to Dame, Jokic. You can't discount Giannis. I mean, he's a back-to-back MVP for a reason, but I think it also narrative comes with it. He's now gotten 2 in a row. It's they don't just like to give them out to guys anymore. There has to be somewhat stories behind, and whether you agree or disagree with that notion that they should matter, it does, and voters have said it matters. That they look for a little bit narrative with it. So Dame putting the team on his back and leading his team deep into a playoff run, or deep into or getting a high playoff seed, it matters, and we'll see what happens. We still got some time to go. Lots more can happen. Hopefully, no more injuries that are significant like that. But we'll see what goes on. And going on this week, the trade deadline is here. Yep, March 25th, we'll have the deadline. As usually it's a little bit earlier, but with the season starting later, obviously they had to mix things around and change it. So we're getting March 25th as the deadline. And so it got me thinking, so we're going to have the play-in tournament now, and so you're going to have more teams relatively in it. I mean, look what happened with the MLB. When they added the second wild card, more teams were hesitant to make moves. There were less sellers because more teams were in it, and thus more teams were buyers. So with the NBA now implementing the play-in tournament for this season, and we'll see if they implement it moving forward, I am a fan of the play-in tournament to a degree. I want to see how it exactly plays out. Last year, it made a lot of sense. I understood, hey, the teams were at an unequal amount of games, so it would have been unfair if you would have discounted someone and said, hey, yeah, you don't get in, but it's not because you didn't win enough, it's because you didn't play enough. So it made sense, and it gave us a great little Portland Trailblazers going on a big-time run. I mean, last year we saw the Suns go 8-0 in the bubble and almost get to that play-in game, but with this season having the play-in games going on, it makes you wonder and go, will we see as many sellers at the deadline? And you will probably see the same amount in the East, at least, because the East, you don't have teams looking and going, okay, well, we're really in this thing. We really have a shot at making noise in the playoffs. No, it's what the East is. It's the lesser of the two conferences, and thus they have teams with worse records being in the playoffs. But the West, you have some legitimate teams who can look and go, we have a shot, or at least can make some noise in the playoffs. I mean, look at the Mavs, who are the 8th seed right now. You look at the Warriors, who are the 9th seed. Those are two teams that can look in the mirror, and it's probably not going to make it this year and make a deep playoff run, but they want to continue to grow off of that. I mean, it's not the Warriors of the dynasty years anymore. So it's not just snap your fingers and you're getting to a finals. But again, they still have their core of guys who are championship caliber players and still want that last run of pushing for a title. And so you would imagine that they will be buyers. The Pelicans, who are 18-24, sitting in that 11 seed, could they be buyers and looking to shop off a few people who maybe are a bit older and don't fit in with their idea of having a eye towards the future as well as trying to somewhat compete right now? Are they a buyer? Are they a seller? Does a play-in tournament help them? Because if they're right there and they can have to win a game and get in as the 8 seed or the 7 seed, they have to go for it, right? Because you want playoff experience is a huge advantage for a young team. If they can get into the playoffs and just feel what it's like, feel the vibe, feel how it is and how you mentally prepare, how you react to the games, it helps for the next season when they are actually feeling like, okay, this is our time to really make a move, and we have to start showing that we are we're not a young up-and-coming team anymore. We are wanting to make steps and take steps and be a playoff team. You need playoff experience so that first time you're in there, it's not a huge shock and you're not awed at the moment. And so you would imagine that a team like the Pelicans or even a team like the Grizzlies, who they just missed out last year on getting some playoff experience and moments. Because for these guys who are able to go through a best of 7 series and see what it's like of, okay, you got the 2-2 and then 1-1-1 or however it is going to be, but just playoff experience and playoff games and getting those nerves out of the way right away. Because the younger you are, the longer it takes you to get to your first playoff series, the more pressure it's going to be when you finally get there. To where if these guys can get in, get their feet wet, and get a feel for it, it only helps for when they are ready to win. And so you would think that these teams maybe would buy a bit more. And so you could have a few teams more ready to buy, more willing to buy, less likely to trade off some of their pieces. They might be a little hesitant. So there is a level of intrigue that the play-in tournament adds, not just to the end of the season, but also right now, because, again, normally it would be, okay, well, these teams know that they can't get to the 8 seed, or they won't be able to win enough games to be an 8 seed. So why would they even try and get pieces? But if you're 11 seed, or if you're right there by the 10 seed, and you want to make that push for that because you can attain the 10th spot, well, you're gonna maybe make a little bit more of a run at a player who can help you not just this year, but long term. You can really only count out a handful of teams. You can toss out the Rockets. You can toss out the Timberwolves. In the West, at least. In the East, you can toss the Pistons out, the Magic out. And then you get into some questionable spots of could these teams make a run? I would throw the Cavs out, even though they're in the 12th seed. I don't see them really going for it. There'd be more sellers. I mean, they've been trying to trade Andre Drummond for how long now? So you would look at them and go, okay, well, they'll be a seller. But the Wizards, Russell Westbrook, Bradley Beal, they're not going to want to be sellers, right? Bradley Beal has stated he wants to win in Washington. You have Westbrook. You're not going to be able to deal him because of that contract that's there. So if you can go and acquire a piece that maybe helps you this year and next year, wouldn't they want to go for that play-in tournament? They're only 4 games back of it. That's not that much to make up. I mean, you got Chicago ahead of you. Toronto is obviously will be a buyer of sorts. They might trade. I still think they'll trade Kyle Lowry, but that might be a move that they make to benefit them again long term and this year, because if they're able to get a new point guard in there or a different guy or someone in there that allows Fred VanVleet to fully take over as the point guard, that's both beneficial this season and for next year. And it's not saying that they're a seller. It's that they're making a trade to change some things up. You have the Pacers, who are in the 9 spot. They could be a buyer. Hornets, now that they lost LaMelo, they might go off as being a seller, or they might look and go, well, now we definitely need to be a buyer because of the fact that we don't have our franchise player, but we still want to get these guys some playoff experience because it does matter. It is important. Charlotte's been terrible for a while. A playoff berth would mean a tremendous amount. You look at the Knicks. The Knicks, who earlier on in the season, excuse me, I can't talk right now, just a couple weeks ago, were sitting in that 4 seed. Well, now they're in the 7 spot. But again, it's not very far off from that 4 spot. Wouldn't they want to break their cycle of missing the playoffs and get there? The Hawks, who have rattled off 8 wins in a row since firing Lloyd Pierce, apparently that was a better move than I thought it was because clearly they needed a new sense of direction, and it's worked out as they're sitting in the 4 seed. The Atlanta Hawks are the 4 seed right now. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to go out and make some big splashy move and bring in this big-name guy, but Bogdanovich hasn't necessarily worked out for the Hawks. They might try and trade him to get off that contract and help them open up. Cam Reddish's name has been shopped around. And again, you still have those teams who look at themselves as true title contenders and the heavyweights of the conferences. Do the Suns want to go out and get a piece because they think they're ready right now? Does Utah look at its team and go, we're deep enough, we've made enough improvements that we can make a deep playoff run and we maybe go add a big-name guy, whoever that could be, to deepen their team? The Clippers, they seem to be maybe a piece short of truly winning the title, and could they be in the market for someone? It's interesting because it adds a layer to it. Because if you're looking at it, and if you're trying to trade with one of these heavyweight contenders, but you're in that play-in tournament range, and you could be a potential 7 seed or an 8 seed, and you're looking up and you're going, we might match up with them. Do we really want to play our former guy? Do we really want to send someone there that's going to knock us out in the playoffs? Now, a lot of these teams might look at it and go, okay, well, we're fine with that happening because this isn't about a this year move. It's about a next year or the next 5 years type of move, which would make sense. But at the same time, when you do have a chance to gain playoff experience and let your guys get a feel for what to expect when it really, really matters, you have to look and think, we will have more buyers this year, or at least more teams hesitant to sell, because of the fact that more teams are looking at it going, well, we have playoff hopes. And yeah, if you got in only because of the play-in tournament this season, and let's say it does go away next year and it's not the same thing, you still made the playoffs if you get in. They're not going to discredit you and take that away from, they only made it because of the play-in tournament. No, you made the playoffs. That's how history will remember it, is that you made the playoffs. You had a playoff experience. You got in and you got experience. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to mean that the Grizzlies are going to go out and make a huge splash move and acquire a game-changing piece. But they might be more careful of trading away, let's say, for the sake of it, Dylan Brooks. Because no, we if we get into the playoffs, we are going to want this guy. Because every team, once you get into the playoffs, no one's playing to go home. They're all playing to win. Once you're in, you're in. And again, once you're in, anything can happen. Now, it's not likely. But once you're in the tournament, once you're in the dance, who knows? You can get hot. You can get rolling. You can at least give some teams some scare. We saw it in the bubble. And yeah, the bubble was a different situation because it was a neutral site. It wasn't the travel that you were doing. You weren't flying to the other team's home games. There will be fans at some of these places once the playoffs start. But you looked at what the Mavericks did against the Clippers. Gave them a run for their money, pushed them 6 games. You can't tell me that didn't help the Mavs. Now they've run into their own issues this season. And you can expect them to probably make a move or try to get some pieces and try to make some stuff happen, because they are sitting at that 7 or that 8 spot right now and want to keep pushing forward and be a title contender sooner than later, because they do have Luka and Porzingis, and they look at that core and go, okay, we got some guys. The Spurs, who knows what the Spurs want to do? They just had their playoff streak ended last year. Do you really think they want to start a streak of going 2 years in a row, missing the playoffs? That's not a streak Popovich wants attached to his name. Now, they could trade off some guys, and again, it's that what benefits you now and the future. Would trading DeMar DeRozan do both? Probably, because they have a really young team. And if they could get a young piece in that's talented and can contribute right away, it would help them this year to where they could be in that play-in tournament and still potentially be in the playoffs. But also, they have built for the future now. So it's really interesting. It's that layer of what happened when MLB added that second wildcard team. That you had more teams looking at it going, we're in this thing. We can't sell off because we have a shot at this. We're right there. We don't need to win 8 more games. We just need to win 3 more games, and that guy will do it. And you're not going to mortgage your future just to get a 7 seed. That's not what I'm saying. But you're going to be you're going to be more hesitant to trade off that role player that kind of helps you contribute if it's not worth it just to shed salary, because you might need him in crunch time. So I'm very interested to see what goes on. It'll be a fun week to keep track of. Obviously, deals are going to start happening. We already have rumors popping off. I'll record on Thursday, so it'll be trade deadline day. We'll have some trades to react to. I can give some grades on what I think of the moves and who's better, who's worse. What does it mean for potential play-in tournament? So, exciting news in the NBA, what's going on. I can't wait for Thursday. It's going to be big. We'll get a little bit of a break from college basketball this week, as after tonight, we'll have the gap until Saturday when the Sweet 16 will tip off, and Thank you, March Madness, for arriving this year. You were truly missed, and it was a great weekend, and keep it up, and let's see who wins this whole thing, and hopefully all the stars that are hurt get back and healthy and better. We don't like injuries. I wish I could turn off injuries, but they happen. And so now you see the true test of the good teams is who is able to move around them and still navigate through some tough times right now, because there's some teams that are going to be dealing with some big time injuries. But hey, it's a team sport. You need other guys to step up. And Dame Lillard, step up. Now is your moment to just keep going and get your first MVP. Show the world it's Dame time. Because he is a special player, and I would love to see his name attached to the MVP trophy. I want to thank you all for listening and sticking around. Don't forget to go Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever it is, however you're listening. Like, subscribe, retweet, and go follow the @GSMC_basketball pod account. Excuse me, not pod. It is the podcast, but the account @GSMC_basketball. Go ahead and give me a follow @Mr_Meowser. Always appreciate it. Let me know what you're thinking of. If you want to hear a certain topic, if you want to hear me talk about whatever, send me a DM, send me a tweet, whatever it is. Give us a like, give us a listen. Keep on coming back. Truly appreciate it. And go listen to all of our other podcasts that we have. We have something for you no matter what it is. Trust me, you can find anything. It's great. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week. Or I'll be back Thursday, to recap what goes on in the trade deadline. Take care.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.